Hey book lovers, I'm Elise, and today we're going to talk about all the books that I DNF'd in 2023. I've read a lot of great books in 2023 and a lot that weren't so great. There were a few that I started and decided, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm done. I tried it, I'm good. So according to Storygraph, on average, I got about 35% through a book before I decided to DNF it. I think 35% is a pretty good amount of a book to figure out, you know, if it's for me or not. So there were 20 books that I DNF'd this year. The first of which was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I DNF'd this one back in January. The thing that turned me off of this book, so this is a book about two sisters from an African American community. They kind of part ways in their adult life, and one of them is white passing. It is historical fiction. The thing that turned me off of this is that I liked the point of view being from the sisters, but then time passed and then we got a point of view from the daughter of one of the sisters or something like that. So it was a POV change that I didn't like it. I wanted to stay in the story that the book started with. That's ultimately why I DNF'd it. The next book I DNF'd was Wistress by Nadine Brandis. It is a fantasy young adult. More often than not, I just don't like young adult, and getting into the story, it felt very young adult for me, and I didn't like it. The next book that I DNF'd is Not a Happy Family by Sherry Lapina. This one, it's a mystery thriller. This family, the mom and the dad, they're really, really rich, and somebody kills them. They have, I think it's 3 kids, and they all have something that they want from the parents, whether it's the house, the money, the family business, they all want something. I felt like all the kids were really spoiled. I got a few chapters in, I didn't care, you know, who killed the parents or how the book was going to turn out, and for me that meant it was time to put it down. The next book I DNF'd is The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz. This is a science fiction and it takes place in a future where I don't actually remember the premise, but I think there are like multiple Earths. It has to do with like environmentalist stuff, protecting Earth or other Earth-like planets from destruction. I did not get very far into this. The writing wasn't doing it for me and I lost interest very quickly. Next is The Angel Maker by Alex North. This I think was my first Alex North. I actually had an arc of this from NetGalley and I got pretty far. This one I think I got probably about halfway. I didn't care. I did not care. If a story cannot get me to care, there's no point in reading it. The next book I DNF'd was Spare by Prince Harry. This one was another that I got about halfway through. The part that I did read I enjoyed, but there is, after a certain point, like I liked hearing about, you know, his and Prince William's life when they were younger. Then he got to the part where he was in the British Army. I really lost interest at that point, and it was very dry. Like if I'd been reading this book physically, there's no way I would have gotten as far as I did. I was listening to it on audio, which I do enjoy doing for memoirs because more often than not it's the author that's reading the audiobook. It was very dry to begin with, and then when he started talking about all the military stuff, I was just like, okay, I'm done. The next book I DNF'd was Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. This is a spooky middle grade. I'm not the target audience. I'm not saying I could never enjoy a middle grade. I do own some that I hope to get to someday, but for this one in particular, it was too hard to connect. Then we have Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemore. This is one about a woman who something happens, and on her birthday, I'm pretty sure her birthday's on New Year's, she wakes up the next day and she's not the next age that she should be. She's like, her timeline jumps around. So one day she's like, I don't know, 21 and it's her birthday, and then she wakes up and instead of 22 she's 58 or something like that. For this one I think it was just mostly the writing style. Plus it was really hard. Like I like to get into a groove when I'm reading, so if the style or the point of view or the overall story, if that switches up a lot, it gives me anxiety and it kind of gives me whiplash. So because every section of the book, she's in a different part of her life, these parts of her life look very different because obviously your life in your 20s is vastly different than it is when you're in your 50s. So that was just really hard for me. Next is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is another one that I didn't get very far in. I just was not connecting at all. Maybe if I'd been reading it physically, I would have done a little bit better. I might give it a try again down the road, but for now it is a DNF. Then we have Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. This is a mystery thriller. I do know the twist because I talked a lot about this book in my stories when I was trying to read it, and then ended up DNFing it. So I basically asked people, I was like, if you want to spoil it for me, please do. And the twist sounds pretty good. It was just another one of those instances where I wasn't really caring, I wasn't connecting. I think she also wrote Insomnia, and that one I only gave like 3 stars. So the fact that I was getting like a quarter of the way into this one and not really enjoying it, I think that was another reason why I DNF'd. Why would I put myself through this for a 3-star read? Next is The Boyfriend Candidate by Ashley Winstead. So Ashley Winstead typically writes thriller novels, but she does have a couple romance. Her first romance, Fool Me Once, that one I really actually enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was pretty good. I think my biggest complaint was that the main character, she did a lot of drugs. Like, she was a partier, and I didn't really enjoy reading about that. This one is following, I think, like her sister or somebody else from Fool Me Once. They're very heavy in politics, and I like their political standing, but for this particular book, if I recall, there's fake dating involved, and just the whole lead up to it, it sounded very familiar to what I've read before in other books. I wasn't feeling it, and I decided to stop reading it. Next is Homefront by Kristen Hanna. Kristen Hanna, I used to love Kristen Hanna. Back in college, when I really got back into reading, it was with a Kristen Hanna book. My first read of hers was Firefly Lane. I absolutely loved it. I've read a ton of her books. I've loved them. This was one of the only backlist of hers that I hadn't read. Couple things. One, my reading tastes have changed drastically. The typical contemporary women's issues that she likes to write about, I just was not connecting with it at all. And I didn't like the story. It was not the best experience at all. This one I did get about halfway before I threw in the towel. Next is A Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. It's YA, and it felt very YA. YA is just not my thing. Then I DNF'd Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This one surprised me because earlier this year I did read The Storied Life of AJ Fikry by the same author, and I loved it. It was really good. It was well written. I gave it 5 stars. But getting into this one, it felt like it was taking a long time for me to feel like I was connecting with the story, feeling like I had a grasp on it. And I know a lot of people love this one, so I was a bit surprised that I decided to DNF it, but maybe I'll give it a chance again down the line. I don't know, but for now, it's a DNF. Next was The Honeymoon Crashers by Christina Lauren. This is a bit of a follow-up to The Unhoneymooners, which I did enjoy. I gave that one 4 stars. The Honeymoon Crashers, I think, is like only on audio. And it was a little ridiculous. It was way too light and fluffy, and it was not my thing at all. Then I DNF Fever House by Keith Rawson. This one, it sounded really good and the cover really intrigued me. I grabbed it from the library. I did not like the writing style. It was very rough and dry and like Stephen King-esque, but without the good storytelling. Then I DNF'd Piranesi by Susanna Clark. This one, I will probably give another chance if I have the opportunity to pick up the audiobook. I had actually just finished reading Bunny, which is a very strange book, and I didn't enjoy it. So to then jump into Piranesi, which is also a very strange book, I was like, my brain can't take this. Then I DNF'd another arc that I got from NetGalley, and that is Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. This one, I got a fair way into the book as well. There was something about like a killer and a family and a vacation house. I don't know. There were a lot of things going on. That brief intermission, my camera battery died. So where were we? Yes, Looking Glass Sound. Yeah, I just wasn't liking it. And there were a couple things that happened that I don't know. I just didn't like it. Ultimately, that's my reasoning. The next book I DNF'd is Normal Rules Don't Apply by Kate Atkinson. This is an anthology of short stories. I do like Kate Atkinson, or I should say I read a book by her quite a number of years ago, Life After Life, and I really liked it. It is historical fiction, but it's also a little bit of fantasy, magical realism. I just remember really liking it. So when I saw this anthology come out, I wanted to give it a go. And I have found that a lot of short story anthologies end up disappointing me. I typically just don't enjoy them. And the final Isn't that annoying? My camera battery died when I had 2.5 books left to talk about. The final book that I DNF'd in 2023 is The Lost Witch by Paige Crutcher. This was also an arc that I had from NetGalley, and I was very delayed in reading it. It starts out in the past, and this woman, I think she's a witch, something happens to her daughter, and she basically makes a bargain with somebody or something to save her daughter. And then next thing she knows, she wakes up in like present day and she meets some of her descendants. I don't know. It was kind of strange, and it wasn't making sense to me. I had to put it down. That's it. Those are all the books that I DNF'd in 2023. Let me know if you DNF'd any of those books as well, and if you loved any of those. I'm sorry. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and until next time, bye.